It's time, Cougar Nation. Cougar Tracks. The best season analysis with BYU insider Mitch Harper on KSL NewsRadio and on video every day on the YouTube page for KSL Sports.
Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL NewsRadio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's Monday, January 26th. It's a big Monday, and the Cougars are getting ready to take on the number one ranked Arizona Wildcats, and that's our top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
It's BYU and Arizona. Number 13 BYU versus number 1 Arizona. The AP Top 25 poll just came out about an hour ago, and the Wildcats at 20-0 remain number 1 in the poll. BYU stands pat at number 13. The pollsters were not impressed with AJ's 43-point performance over Utah, apparently. Look, I get it. There was not much movement at the top of the poll to really make much change, but that doesn't matter at all. The AP poll, yes, it's cool to see a number 1 ranking opponent come in, but for BYU, it's about taking care of your own business and improving your seed line. But for anyone that was watching that BYU-Utah game over the weekend, AJ dropping 43 was a sight to behold as he set a freshman record, and this was AJ on the moment he knew that he was going to score 40.
When I hit like 26, I had him and Tyler was saying like, yo, keep being aggressive, but Tyler actually said, yo, you better get 40. And I looked up at the scoreboard, and there was like 11 minutes left, and I was like, I might be able to get it. And I kept going off. I kept hitting shots.
That he did, and he was 80% from three-point range was AJ Dybantsa, which I think is significant, especially going into this matchup tonight against Arizona. Tip-off tonight at 7 p.m., pregame at 6 here on KSL NewsRadio, because if AJ's knocking the three, that just unlocks a completely different dimension that we really haven't seen much this season. He's showing that he's capable. And when you think long-term about the NBA and the spacing that he's going to have on the floor, he's going to have opportunities to knock down threes consistently at a higher clip. In college basketball, that's not what he's necessarily asked to do within this BYU program. But seeing that on Saturday gives Arizona a little bit something extra to think about. And this Arizona team is outstanding. They are really good. They lead the all-time series against BYU 21-20. And I love this series being back for BYU basketball. It was a long time ago when the Cougars and the Wildcats were playing consistently as members of the WAC. But you think about basketball out west, I think Arizona is the standard out west. UCLA, yes, in the John Wooden days. But I think from, the Lute Olson era to now, it's been about Arizona basketball out west. And for BYU to really level up its program and be in a situation where even the Arizona fan base gets energized and enthusiastic about this game, I think Cougar fans should be really excited about that. Arizona, though, really good in these spots, 26-13 against top 25 teams under Tommy Lloyd. And for BYU, it's a quick turnaround from Saturday to this Monday night, big Monday game. There's been a few Monday games since the days of the Mountain West and the WAC when big Mondays were more commonplace. BYU even had a number 1 matchup against Gonzaga on a big Monday that was moved up during that COVID year in 2021 that landed in a primetime ESPN spot on a Monday night. But more times than not, these Monday games are kind of tricky for BYU because, of course, you don't practice on Sunday at BYU, but this was Kevin Young on the quick turnaround to getting ready for the number 1 Wildcats.
Yeah, we'll be able to have some great discussion with our players. I mean, we already started after the game just talking about the similarities of the game plan tonight and how that sort of, like I said, the similarities that we can draw from it for the Arizona game. So I actually like when the regular season schedule gets funky because I think it prepares you well for the postseason. You never know kind of like how quick your turnarounds are going to be and that kind of thing. So especially when you have to do it and get ready to play a good team, which is what will happen in March. And so I think it'll be a good thing we can reference even later in the year.
I like that Kevin Young mentioned that, a reference for later in the year. Well, what's later in the year for the NCAA tournament on a Monday night after a quick turnaround from a Saturday? The Final Four. That's the only time that's a reference in the NCAA tournament. That's what BYU's aspiring to reach this season. Still a long road to go, but this is a great barometer check against the best team in college basketball right now. Like BYU, though, Arizona has played a relatively light Big 12 schedule to this point. BYU went on the road to Lubbock and faced Texas Tech. They lost in West Texas, and even Houston over the weekend realized how tough it is to win in the USA. Texas Tech is surging. Arizona hasn't been challenged as much. They have the widest margin of victory in Big 12 play this season. They're defeating opponents by an average of 18 points per game. This is a game where Arizona is favored, but maybe 2-3 points somewhere in there. This is expected to be a one-possession game that comes down to the wire. How does Arizona respond to something like that? That's going to be really interesting in this game. BYU also, outside of Texas Tech, relatively light schedule to this point. The Big 12 has an elite top 6. But after the top 6, I think there's a pretty big drop-off. Everyone's pretty competitive. Even Utah showed you with Terrence Brown and Don McHenry. They've got some firepower in that backcourt that can make things challenging for anyone. But this is the real kick it into overdrive moment for both of these teams in regards to facing the buzzsaw that is this Big 12 schedule. BYU is 1-9 all time against number 1 teams. It's kind of crazy to think, too, that 6 of those 10 matchups for BYU against AP number 1 teams were against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Alex Carey on the KSL Sports Zone, he writes on X, no love for the Zags? Look, I love the Zags when it comes to Western basketball, but I think Arizona is the standard. And Arizona, to me, is the crown jewel of Western basketball in the last 35 years because they won a title, too. I know they haven't been to a Final Four since 2001. I think they're going to be honoring that team coming up soon. I think next month, maybe later this month. But Arizona, to me, is just a big-time program. The amount of NBA talent, and Gonzaga's legit, too. BYU saw that firsthand many times. But I just look at as Arizona as just a program that will stand the test of time with all these different coaches. I mean, you think about Lute Olson. They've had so many different Kevin O'Neal. They had, the Texas coach. His name escapes me right now. I can picture him. BYU beat him decisively twice. His name escapes me. Sean Miller. And then, of course, Tommy Lloyd, I think, has taken it back to the heights that Arizona fans honestly expect. But BYU's last win, and only win, against a number 1 team was in 2017 against Gonzaga. Remember, that was the game. It was a regular season finale in the Kennel. Gonzaga fans put out those papers that said 30-0. They were ready to coronate and anoint Gonzaga as a 30-0 team. And BYU won that game as a 20-point underdog in the Kennel. They won that game 79-71. BYU has never defeated a team that's ranked number 1 inside the Marriott Center. So a little bit of an opportunity for history tonight. But other games against number 1 AP top 25 teams, Duke in 92 in the Maui Invitational, UCLA in the NCAA tournament, Kentucky in 1951 with Adolph Rupp, some blue bloods. And then pretty much the Zags. 6 times BYU faced the Zags, the number 1 ranked team, and only took them down once. They were 1-5, 1-9 all time. It's first opportunity against a number 1 team in the Big 12 era where BYU personnel-wise can go blow for blow with a team like Arizona, because you go back to those Gonzaga meetings, Jalen Suggs, Corey Kispert, BYU didn't have NBA guys. That's what makes this type of matchup tonight so fun for BYU fans. Even though you're viewed as an underdog, you've got the personnel to match up with the talent of Arizona with Koa Peat, Braden Burries, Jaden Bradley. You've got AJ Dybantsa. You got Richie Saunders. You got Rob Wright. This is an outstanding matchup and should be a really good one tonight. Tip-off again at 7 o'clock here on KSL NewsRadio. Let's take a break. On the other side, let's get to know the Wildcats at a deeper level with an insider, Justin Spears of the Arizona Daily Star, next here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks. It's a big Monday. BYU basketball is hosting the number 1 ranked Arizona Wildcats, undefeated, 20-0. When Arizona joined the Big 12, I think Cougar fans were hoping for nights like this, and that is going to be a big game tonight in the Marriott Center. And to get a lowdown on the Arizona Wildcats, I'm joined now by Justin Spears, who does a fantastic job covering the Wildcats for the Arizona Daily Star, and also host of Ali and Spears on ESPN Tucson. Justin, welcome on in.
What's up, Mitch? Good to see you.
It's good seeing you as well. This is a massive game. And am I wrong that it feels like the Big 12 maybe, I don't want to say re-energize the Arizona program. Like, they've always been big time, especially with Tommy Lloyd. But, man, games like this, these are big time opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why Arizona fans were so excited about joining the Big 12 because, after, so many years of competing against UCLA and Oregon in the Pac-12, and while a lot of Arizona fans, I'm sure, would love to still be a part of, one of the premier conferences on the West Coast, when Arizona joined the Big 12, which is, pretty much the best basketball conference in college sports, a lot of Arizona fans were like, okay, let's recreate some rivalries. Let's recreate some intense battles that everyone has circled on their calendars. And we're all wondering who's going to be that team. Well, the first one that comes to mind is Kansas. And the Jayhawks have been really the standard of the Big 12 for the last couple of decades. But you go up and down this conference, and Houston, Iowa State, now, obviously Arizona, there's just a lot of really good teams in this conference, and I'm just really happy that BYU and Kevin Young, they have really done a nice job of turning this basketball program into one of the top spots, not just in the Big 12, but in all of college basketball. And I think the proximity, the fact that Arizona and Utah are very close to each other, I think adds some juice to this matchup. But, I always thought that Kansas was going to be Arizona's biggest rival in the Big 12. And now here you are talking about this BYU team that has NBA players, that has a coach that comes from an NBA background. I think it's fair to say that the Cougars might be Arizona's biggest rival, especially when it comes to basketball.
It is wild times when you put it that way. Again, talk with Justin Spears here on Cougar Tracks. We get ready for BYU and Arizona tonight. Tip-off at 7, pregame at 6 here on KSL. Justin, Arizona's 20-0, first time since 2014 that the Wildcats have jumped out to a 20-0 start. What's the strength of this squad?
I think the strength of this team is they don't rely on a bunch of three-pointers. Like, if you look at their numbers, they're not the greatest three-point shooting team, but they also don't attempt a lot of three-pointers. This is a team that's going to operate around the basket. They like to use their size. I believe they are the 7th longest team in all of college basketball. So they've got some dudes down there in the post. And even though that they aren't relying on a bunch of three-pointers, if you look at them, they are the top scoring team in the Big 12. And so their passing abilities, sharing the ball, getting into the lane, mid-range jump shots, that is really Arizona's bread and butter. And they are also the best rebounding team in the Big 12 and one of the top rebounding teams in all of college basketball. So, if you're looking for like a football comparison, and it's almost like they are that typical Big Ten team that plays really good defense, that runs the football, and it just works. Arizona, they don't live by the three, they don't die by the three, and I think that bodes well for a team like that. The fact that they don't rely on a bunch of three-pointers, and yet they are still so effective scoring, I think that formula, that method is really going to help out in the long run, especially in the NCAA tournament. And, I could pinpoint one player for this Arizona team, but there's just, it's really a potpourri of guys. Now, they have an 8-man rotation. And the thing about this Arizona team is that, what did Forrest Gump say? It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You really don't know what Arizona Wildcat is going to step up on a nightly basis. It could be Braden Burries going for 20 points and maybe having 10 rebounds, and he's one of the best rebounding guards in the Big 12 right now. It could be Koa Peat, and I'm excited for this matchup between him and AJ Dybantsa because we're looking at 2 top 5 picks in this upcoming NBA draft going toe-to-toe. Or it could be Mr. Clutch, the guy that has been a point guard here for the last few years in Jaden Bradley, who entered this season not getting a lot of love as one of the top point guards in college basketball. I think there was a list out there, entering the season of the top 20 point guards in college basketball, and Jaden Bradley's name was not on that. So he carried that into the season. He had a chip on his shoulder, wanted to prove that he is one of the top point guards in college basketball. And, his numbers don't really, they're not eyebrow raising, but if you look at Jaden Bradley and if you just look at what he does throughout the game, especially in crunch time, he is a very reliable constant for Arizona. And I think that matchup with him and Robert Wright at BYU, I think that, there's a number of really good matchups in this game. But I think Arizona, one of their biggest strengths is their versatility. They don't have to use one guy to go for 25 to 30 points if they want to win this game. They could beat you in a number of ways. And it's kind of like a boa constrictor, right? Like you think you have a shot at beating Arizona, and then they do this thing in the second half where all of a sudden you look up at the scoreboard and they're up by 20 points. Like they would go from being up by 6 points to all of a sudden up by 22 points, and they do it in the snap of a finger. So this team is versatile. They could beat you in a number of ways, but really their biggest strength is their ability to rebound, defend, and operate around the basket.
You brought up the high-level matchups, the intriguing matchups in this game. Do you think that we will see Peat and Dybantsa go back and forth and defend one another, or do you think Tommy Lloyd put someone else on AJ Dybantsa to try to slow him down?
Yeah, as a basketball fan, you would love to see Koa Peat versus AJ Dybantsa. Those guys, if they can get into some one-on-one situations, that's going to be must-see basketball. But I would imagine that, a number of guys are going to try to slow down AJ Dybantsa. Heck, the guy just scored 43 points in their last game. So he is going to be a handful. And so I think that Koa Peat will have a role in trying to defend AJ Dybantsa. But I would imagine, some other forward type of players are going to try to get in there as well. And, AJ Dybantsa is really good in, the mid-range around the basket area. And I think, a guy like Toby Awaka coming off the bench, he's built like an NFL tight end. He looks like a D end, and he is so tough and so mobile. And he's going to be a really good defender. He already is a good defender for Arizona, but I think in this game, his defensive abilities and also his rebounding abilities too. One of the top rebounders, not just on this Arizona team, but in the Big 12. I think a guy like Toby Awaka and his tough defense and, trying to bully around the freshmen. AJ Dybantsa, he's a really skilled player. He's built to play in the NBA right now, but Toby Awaka has been playing college basketball for several years now. He's in his last year, and he is really kind of like the enforcer of the team, but he's also, he's not going to talk trash to you. He's a very respectful, but man, he plays very tough. And so I'd imagine a body like that is probably going to, his experience, his strength is going to try to really test AJ Dybantsa.
Last thing for you, Justin, what's one area or maybe question mark you still have about this Arizona team? Might be hard to ask that. They remain the number one team. They're 20-0, but is there an area that maybe could be a little bit of a weakness? Is it the 3-point shooting, or is it something else?
Yeah, you could really say that the 3-point shooting can be a concern for Arizona. My concern, for the Wildcats, and, we really haven't seen it yet, or at least we haven't seen it really since, non-conference play when they're playing against some really good teams. But, if you get into a situation where you and BYU are pretty much toe-to-toe, you're locked late in the game. Arizona really hasn't had a game like that in Big 12 play to where, the last 2 minutes it comes down to it and you're like, I don't know if Arizona's going to win that game. So how Arizona handles that pressure on the road at the Marriott Center and then going up against a tough BYU team that not only has arguably the best player in college basketball in AJ Dybantsa, but they've got some experienced players. Like, I have done this interview and I haven't even mentioned Richie Saunders. And Richie Saunders is, an all Big 12 caliber player, one of the top forwards in the country right now. And Richie Saunders, he's an experienced player. That's going to give Arizona some problems. So this collection of BYU guys, if they get down to, maybe being within a possession or even having a lead down the stretch. How will Arizona answer that bell? This is going to be a huge test for them because you know what? We're approaching the month of February, and the next thing you know, the postseason is going to get here. Arizona's schedule moving forward is going to get really tough, and how they handle those situations, especially late in the second half when the games are really close, that's one thing that I'm going to be paying attention to.
He's Justin Spears. You can check out his work at the Arizona Daily Star. Also listen to him at ESPN Tucson, Spears and Ali in the morning. So tomorrow morning, get the reaction on the Arizona side from this big game. Justin, appreciate the time, and hope to do this again down the road when BYU's in Tucson next month.
Yes, sir, man. See you, Mikhail.
Big thanks to Justin Spears for hopping onto the program and previewing this matchup and giving the lowdown on this Arizona team as Cougar Tracks rolls on here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. Every day we're talking BYU sports, BYU basketball, BYU football here on Cougar Tracks. Just a quick programming note coming up tomorrow. I'll get to the projected post-portal football depth chart for defense. I know I teased that on Monday, or on Friday for today's show. But I thought to myself, today's such a massive BYU basketball game day. I want to give all the oxygen to BYU hoops for this big game against the number one team in the country in the Arizona Wildcats, which again tips off tonight at 7 o'clock. And with this game against Arizona, BYU on the availability report, Kennard Davis is questionable. Everyone else out, as we would expect: Kozlowski, KJ Perry, Nate Pickens, Dawson Baker, Xavier Staten. Kennard Davis played a season-low 12 minutes against Utah on Saturday. Makes you wonder, could there be a little bit of a different starting lineup if Davis is not able to go tonight? Now, questionable, it's about 50-50 chance that a player is going to play. So we'll see tonight when tip-off rolls around 5:30. We'll get the 90-minute before tip report in regards to Kennard Davis. But if he's not available, you wonder if Hadim Boop gets the call, because Hadim Boop, he played about 21 minutes in that game against Utah. And Hadim Boop is someone that Kevin Young really likes for the energy that he brings off the bench. And Hadim Boop is a player that can defend anyone 1-5. And when you're facing Arizona, you've got to be great on the glass. And Hadim Boop, if they give him the nod, could really help on that effort. BYU has been good on the offensive rebounds this year in Big 12 play. They're averaging 15 offensive rebounds per game. So that's 90 boards through 6 games on the offensive glass. Keep that going against the Wildcats, because last year, if you remember, in Provo, Arizona, who's only one of 2 teams that took down BYU, led by Kevin Young, inside the Marriott Center, they out-rebounded BYU in a big way last year. Arizona it was a 20-rebound edge on BYU on the glass in that game in the Marriott Center. Now, of course, BYU got revenge in the McKell Center, but that moment in the Marriott Center last year against Arizona, that looked like a bleak time for BYU, where it's like, man, they might miss the NCAA tournament. They were a bubble team. Remember, then they went to Cincinnati and lost, and things were looking bleak for BYU. Much brighter outlook this time around for BYU, as the Cougars are comfortably an NCAA tournament team. This is just a matter of seeding and honestly chasing a Big 12 title as well, and positioning yourself to level up to the competition that's in front of you. But offensive rebounds and rebounds in general will be huge for BYU against an Arizona team that is outstanding on the glass. And as you heard from Justin, they have so many different guys that they can throw at you, the Arizona Wildcats. You know, they've got 5 players that average in double figures, with Peat, Burries, Bradley, Krivas, Awaka, all averaging double figures. And they got guys off the bench that score 8 and 9 points. So many different guys can be thrown at you from this Arizona team. And Krivas is the kind of new face for BYU. Remember, last year was Henry Visar. He's now at North Carolina, and BYU faced him in an exhibition. Krivas was always the guy that they liked, the highest ceiling. You know, Visar was really good too, but Krivas, he suffered that injury, I believe it was the foot injury last year, so he missed all of Big 12 play. He's been outstanding as of late. And that's going to be a really intriguing matchup to see Keba Keita versus Krivas. Krivas is averaging 15 points, 11 rebounds, and shooting 70% from the floor in the last 3 games. And so Keita, can he stay on the floor, avoid foul trouble? But then also Bidu Ahmed too. Can he give valuable minutes when you need to give Keita a breather? Can Boop defend him too? BYU's got a better front court than I think is being given credit to, and I think they've been trending up quietly the last few games since the addition of Bidu Ahmed, but still, a work in progress, that second unit for BYU. But I think there was some improvements made from that Utah game with the second unit for BYU's front court. But that's going to be an area to watch with Montavious Krivas, who's playing really well. He's 7'2" as well. And then you've got Toby Awaka, who is outstanding on the glass, one of the best rebounders in college basketball. So BYU's got to keep him off the glass. I also think in this game, too, the highlight matchup of AJ Dybantsa and Koa Peat, that is going to be a must-see event. And this was AJ on facing Arizona and Koa Peat.
Now, it's going to be a tough game, but this is what you live for. Like, this is why I came to the Big 12, to play teams like this. Obviously, I've known Koa for the past 3 years, winning 3 gold medals with him. I've been playing against Braden Burries with SFG, guys like that. I mean, it's going to be a great environment. We're looking to hand them their first loss. Marriott Center is going to be behind us, and we're prepared for them.
I do think the atmosphere is going to be pretty electric for BYU in this game. There's no doubt about that. And Tommy Lloyd, head coach of the Wildcats, he's all too familiar with BYU from his days at Gonzaga, and now is the head coach for the Wildcats. This is his thoughts on what BYU is this season.
Well, they're a great team. They're a great team. They got a really good coach. They have a really strong basketball culture at BYU. Obviously, they got a great environment, and they're going to be excited to play. I'm sure they're focused, 100% on Utah today, just like we were focused on West Virginia. But, we'll start our prep for the game tonight, and we know we're playing a really good basketball team, in a tough place to play. So we know it's going to be an incredible challenge.
I know that Tommy Lloyd, he's really an excellent coach, Tommy Lloyd is. And I'm not going to lie, his Coke Zero placement there had me feel like I needed a drink. That Coke Zero just looked really good from Tommy Lloyd on that podium. And more from the podium with Tommy Lloyd was his thoughts on AJ Dybantsa, who he coached with Team USA over the past summer.
First off, he's an incredible talent, and he's a great young man. That's the first thing you want to say about him. What I've always been impressed about with AJ is, not only is he a supreme talent, and when you guys watch the game, he's gonna do a few things in that game. You're like, wow. Just the way he moves is different. Is he leaves space in the room for the other players to be their best version of themselves too. And, a lot of times you get a young talent like him, and he's so talented, he can kind of suck the air out of the room because it all becomes about him and his talent. AJ's not like that. So AJ not only can be, the most talented player on the floor, he can also let their other talented players play really well. And I've always been impressed with that.
High praise from Tommy Lloyd for AJ Dybantsa. By the way, quick correction, plus 15 in rebounds last year was Arizona against BYU a season ago in Provo. But Tommy Lloyd knows that this is going to be a good challenge for his team. And I could definitely see BYU winning this game. I'm really curious to see how Arizona shoots from three-point range in this game. I thought that performance against West Virginia where they knocked down 10 threes, does that carry over into this game against BYU, who both of these teams really good, I think, defensively in stretches. I think BYU is much improved on the defensive end. Arizona in conference play #1 in adjusted efficiency defense in the Big 12. But Arizona's got capable shooters, even though they don't shoot it that much. They were 10 of 23 from three-point range against West Virginia. You look at some of the numbers, the guys that could be the potential snipers for the Arizona Wildcats. Anthony Del Orso, 80 attempts this season. He's shooting only 30% from three. He's always got the potential to go off from distance. Jaden Burries, 91 attempts, 36%. And then Jaden Bradley shoots it at the highest clip, but only 33 attempts. Bradley's knocking down 42% of his threes this season. let's get to my score prediction for BYU and Arizona.
Score prediction. Will BYU come out on top? It's time for Mitch's score prediction for the next game.
Man, this is a big game. BYU and Arizona. Cannot wait for this one. The secondary market for the tickets in this game, pretty penny. There's tickets in the lower bowl more than $1,000. The cheapest tickets now are, I'm seeing entry on SeatGeek, BYU's official ticket secondary market, about $130, $140, somewhere in there. But expensive ticket to get into this building, into the Marriott Center tonight. It's going to be absolutely off the charts energy, excitement. I think Cougar Nation is just chomping at the bit for a big-time Marriott Center opponent. They haven't had it yet. Even in the Big 12, it's been Arizona State, it's been TCU, it's been Utah, which rivalry games are always big, but still, like, now this is the type of game BYU fans have been waiting for. A big dog in the Big 12 coming to the Marriott Center on Big Monday, no less, with Booj and Fran Fraschilla on the call. Sign me up. I'm going with BYU to get it done. I'm going to say BYU 87, Arizona 83. Look, I think Arizona's Final Four good. I think they're as every bit the team as advertised as that number one ranking and undefeated record would suggest. I mean, they've beat some really good teams. Florida, UConn, you can go on and down the line. They challenge themselves in non-conference play. But at some point, a team's going to take a loss, especially in this league like the Big 12. And I think BYU with AJ, I thought that performance against Utah really turned the corner where he is reaching another level in his game. And I expect Richie Saunders to have maybe a bounce-back performance because against Utah, it was kind of pedestrian effort by Richie's standards. And on a night where Richie was not his vintage self, only going 1 of 5 against the Utes from three-point range, BYU's big three still combined for 76 points. So I'm going to expect they score at least 75 as a big three again because that's what they do. And I think BYU on the glass limits Arizona enough, and that's pretty manageable. I could see Arizona still having a rebounding margin, but I don't think it's going to be in double figures. I could see it being just a handful where BYU is really competitive on the glass, and I think Rob Wright knocks down some big shots from three. BYU's got to be able to hit the three in this game at a consistent clip. They cannot go to 20%, 22%, as they've had games in Big 12 play where they've shot that. And look, BYU doesn't need to rely on the three as in years past, but I think if you're going to go up against a team like Arizona, who is so efficient inside the arc, and BYU's really good in that space too, but I think the X factor can be the three-point ball for both teams in this game. And I think for BYU, being in the home environment, I think that gives them a little bit of an edge, makes them feel a little bit in their comfort zone. I mean, you think about the Marriott Center, BYU is always good in this building. I mean, 81% winning percentage inside the Marriott Center, 13-game home win streak. This is not an easy place to win. Arizona can win nearly anywhere. Heck, they won in Stores. So if they get this win, BYU, this might be storm the floor type moment because it's not every day you're playing the number one team. But I think BYU gets it done. I think they're going to get a signature victory for this season, get their first quad 1A win of their resume and really start the ascent and the climb up the seed line potentially and get into that conversation as maybe a 2 seed in bracketology forecast with this potential win that I'm forecasting with BYU 87, Arizona 83. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I'll have coverage inside the Marriott Center for tonight's game on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. We'll be back tomorrow to recap this game, talk BYU football, post-portal, defensive depth chart projection, and set the stage for the week ahead with BYU basketball versus Kansas as well. Loaded week ahead here on Cougar Tracks. Appreciate all of you. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll talk to you tomorrow here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.